I wrote this very recently, on the day of what would have been my father's 63rd birthday. Now, I don't really tend to overthink poems when I write them now, at least the ones I'm semi-proud of, But sometimes it's still, a process. I let the sort of thoughts linger before they come out. This one was written very quickly. Whether or not that means it's good isn't the point, but it's about my father. Everybody's birthday. My father left no will and testament, but he did leave a will as testament, and a bunch of neglected regrets as monument, some deflected dejects as last lament. But fuck it, everybody dies, and so will you, as will I, but not until the lies are through. So pick up some dust and sit down, hear the whimsical weepings of a clown, and meet your maker as I met mine. For one brief moment, a glimpse of the divine, till that Trinity broke, bespoke the Holy Ghost, and the Father and the Son drifted off the coast. The crest of a wave fallen to drown us both, the perfect storm of abject harm, the lying of the oath. Then the tide turned and ebbed away, as the sea tales of that lost sailor ended that day. I was in that shipwreck too, but I made it to shore, though he's still with me in this room, but he don't breathe no more. God is dead, and this ain't no Sermon on the Mount. My dad would have turned 63 today, though it's hard to keep count. So long story short, my father's memorial service is coming up this Saturday. It's March 29th? May 29th, there we go. I'm probably not going to be able to say anything at it, because again, my mother and my sister, who were behind all the arrangements, weren't going to let me know. In fact, I fear that if I show up there, I'll be met with police, because again, my mother and my sister are drug addicts, and I've called them out for their drug addiction, and I came at them very intensely when my father was dying, because again, I was trying to protect him, and they're drug addicts. You have to deal with them in interesting ways, which is why I decided to document everything. From when I first got the video of my mother having a drug freak out after my cot vicariously got high, or directly got high, I don't know what she was doing. She was trying to throw my bike out, and you can see she was in a state of madness. And ever since that moment, ever since me being back in here and being there and about to figure out their disease finally, they lost their minds. So they tried to get the police on me before. And would they do that? The day of my father's memorial? Yeah, they would. And they certainly aren't going to let me try to get it, on the mic. Because I tell the truth. And I respect my father and his legacy and the life that he lived. And I will tell that story. But to tell that story in its earnestness, well, it's fitting I'm wearing this Al Gore pen, because it's an inconvenient truth that some people don't want to hear. And I'd rather choose oblivion. That's where my mother's at. So to assuage that, I'm going to do what I've been doing to cope with this, and trust me, even my father, after he was hospitalized, back when I thought maybe he would actually make it, I did a reenactment of his funeral because I saw all this stuff coming, but I also knew it wouldn't be able to be actualized. Not just the way that I want, but the way that he wanted. Because again, so everything was taken away from him. But I tell you what my father taught me. The one lesson he taught me that I saw through him and all of his ups and downs in his life is that you can lose everything. Whether from your own fault or just the dumb luck and the bad fates, everything can be taken away from you. But as long as you have the power to tell the truth, you have never lost. You always have the ability to redeem yourself. That is why I tell stories. That's why I love storytelling, because my father showed me the redemptive power. And I don't care what it makes me look like. I'm going to be damned to do his disservice in name if I stop doing that. And if I let fear get in the way of showing up there to that memorial and to anyone who will listen to tell them who my father was. The real stories. And I'm trying to be kind and nice because like my father taught me. He used to say, it's a way to tell a man to go to hell, but in this case it's a woman, my mother. It's a way to tell a woman to go to hell. But then there's a way to tell a woman to go to hell and make her look forward to the trip, and I hope I can achieve that. But if I can't, fuck it. It's about my father, and it's about me, because he loved me more than he loved anything, more than he loved himself. I'm glad he's not around. I mean, it's a catch-22. I'm glad he's not around to see how he was done, to see how his legacy was done dirty, to see how I wasn't allowed to know where he was or that he was in hospice care for the blunt fact of my mother wanting to take all of my father's money so she could use drugs. Whatever. She can take everything away from me, but she's not gonna take my ability to redeem my father by telling his story. So here we go. I don't know how many parts this is gonna be. And again, unlike my father, I like to repeat myself. I've sung and done a lot of these before, But seeing as his memorial is right on the horizon, I feel like giving my father an official eulogy. A real eulogy is in order, so that's what this is. Much like my father, though, we never fucking really know what we're gonna say before we say it. We kind of just wing it, so bear with me. My father was an amazing orator. Again, he was always in some way in his life a kind of performer, even when he was an athlete, and didn't necessarily use words. It was always using your physicality and your presence. But for either just the Irish charm or maybe he learned it from his mother and his father. I didn't really know them that well, and he never really told me enough stories for me to really have an accurate picture of them in my mind. But again, this motherfucker was charming. Bill Moffett could talk his way out of a lot of bullshit, trust me, I saw it. I heard about it. I'd always tell him, I was like, Dad, you always just figure out a way to pull a rabbit out of your hat. But he would always tell me, he's like, he knew the things that I didn't know or wasn't willing to know that, and he would always tell me obliquely, what stories and things he would take to his grave, He was an amazing storyteller. He was just a fucking, conversationalist. Again, sometimes when he'd be too fucked up, he'd fucking take apple in the tree. But he knew how to connect with people with words. But before those words happened, to make that actual connection with the soul, with the spirit, being there with somebody. And it's just funny, because he lived a life of escapism and denial, but at his core, he was a man of confrontation, a man to stand up and speak the truth, regardless, even if it was going to damn him and doom him. Either it was going to be what saved his ass, or it was going to be the one thing that he had left that made his ass something worth saving to begin with. So it took all sorts of forms, whether he talk his way out of fucking some academic jam, or just fucking later on in his life when he was just a fucking bar crawler. Or the poetry he would write, the way he would charm women. Now, often it would be, he would forget about his love for the truth, I think, and just fucking bullshit them because he was a horny motherfucker, and the ends justify the means, and self-rationalization, but you know, I don't want to speak too ill of the dead. But let me tell you, the rigor mortis is befitting of the man. But he was a great storyteller. And I remember it came out more so when he went into recovery. Because again, that's what AA and NA is about. That's why this trope is you get up and you stand up and you speak your truth. And you say, every time I am an alcoholic, you repeat the mantra, the serenity prayer, but also the rite of passage is to tell your story. Now, I remember I was in that room. I was in those rooms at what used to be St. Rose Church for those meetings. And I got to both, see my father, use his charm. But they didn't let me actually listen to his story. And I'm realizing now why they didn't want me to know the full extent of the disease. My mother still doesn't. But he crushed it, Everyone laughing, everyone crying, the way he tells it. It was such a powerful moment for him. Which is why I remember, I was often a quiet kid. Very quiet kid. I was traumatized. I would read. Anything I got my hands on. Goosebump novels. Shit I shouldn't have been reading at the time, at the ages, I wasn't ever into Stephen King. I was into Dean Koontz. Which is funny, because looking back on it, he's more or less a fucking Christian. Those are more or less left behind books now that I'm thinking about it. Well, talk to my dad, but I remember when I really came out of my shell in high school, and I really started to become, my father's son, but also me, my own identity. By the seat of my pants, I did very well academically, and I made it into East Hartford High School, so the bar was, no offense, it's not their fault. And I made it into the top 20. I remember the very first thing I said when I got invited to the room with all the kids that I looked around at everybody, and I said, hey, where are the black people? The potential valedictorian, the smartest person in East Hartford, was a black man, my friend Harry, but he wasn't in East Hartford High School. But, academic teams, and long story short, there's a lot of racism in East Hartford, even though it's very diverse. So we got invited to what used to be the Marco Polo. Used to be a big towny haunt. Now it's honestly a restaurant with better quality food, but Indian food. So the townies hate it because they're the townies. So anywho, we're there at the Marco Polo. It's the top 20 speech for high school. This is about my father, but again, this is all about me. This is what my father taught me, and I didn't know what I was going to say. I felt so resentful of the people in there, and we were just going to get a turn to speak, and I knew that but I knew I had to fucking stand out of the crowd, chip on my shoulder, my father's son. I didn't know what I was going to say. But I remember before they called me up, I looked at my dad, and I smiled, I give him a wry smile, and I go, hey, Dad, you better go out and start the car, And he was just, you could see the excitement. And I get up and I get behind the mic, but I knew it wasn't about proving anything at that point. That what my father taught me, what words were, was about connect with those people in the room, and you try to make their miserable lives a little less miserable, even for a few minutes. So I had the whole room die, and the jokes weren't even that good, but I was making jokes, and I was making fun of myself, and I owned that room, and I could see my father was as proud as he ever was. But now I'm realizing he wanted me to hone those skills only so I'd give a great eulogy for him, because he was a fucking conceited bastard. So I'm obligated to try to do that. And who knows how many parts, but to be continued.